Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Open Space Land Acquisition and Farmland Preservation Committee regularly scheduled meeting Monday, June 15th at 6 p.m. It's a little ahead of time in the essence of being able to get a presentation from Ray Carpentino regarding the leases for farmers at Streska Farm. But before we move to that, I'd like a motion or entertain a motion to approve the minutes of May 18th.
Entertain a motion to approve the minutes for May 18th.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Okay. We do have a public comment section. I do not have anything for public comment. John, anything?
No.
Hearing no public comment. Ray is, so the idea tonight, folks, is to let Ray present on a lease that is fairly well vetted out with town council, and for this committee to possibly vote to send this up to council to review, to leave this committee, send it up to town council for review. Having said that, Ray, could you jump in with what you would like to say?
Sure. I wouldn't call it a presentation. I'm just going to go through the memo. You know, if you want me to go paragraph by paragraph, I'll do that. And then the memo dated 6/8/20.
Let's just work on the memo and then let's see what kind of questions we have.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. Just one addition, Kerma has reviewed the lease, and they just recently got back to us with some additional legalese comments that we'll incorporate into the final lease. So it's been very well vetted.
That's the insurance lingo.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Let me just start at the beginning here. Attached, I provided you with a copy of the farm leasing map, which was based on the initial farm plot map provided by the farmers in our initial meeting. They had delineated certain fields they would like to farm. The three leasees would like to farm. Our engineering department took that map, refined it quite a bit with our CAD system, and what you have attached will be Exhibit C, the lease section farm map. Each farm field was divided and is really equally divided into two different sections. We have three sections. Each section has a tract A and tract B, and each of those tracts have a specific acreage. So each farmer will get a section in two tracts. If that makes sense to you? Mm-hmm. And I have an example. You know, Hayes Farm is proposing to lease Section 3 Upper Rhodes Road. Section 3 has two tracts, 3A and 3B, for a total of just over 11 acres. Fairweather Acres has a similar setup, as does Gilbert Farm.
Question, Ray. Why delineate it as two tracts?
That was a recommendation by our town attorney, because the tracts are not contiguous. The property, you know, the fields are not contiguous. They are separated by trees. So she thought it would be best and much more defined to specify the tracts, a little more accurate as far as the acreage goes.
Oh, you mean it's kind of akin to leasable space versus common area?
Right, exactly. Continue?
Please.
Okay. Section 2 just identifies the goals, the town goals for the property that we had cited in the RFQ. Sections 3 through 7 address the lease terms and the rental rates. Excuse my voice, suffering from allergies. That's all it is, just allergies. So we call for 3 leases. What you're seeing now is just a sample of the lease. We will have 3 separate leases, individually signed, individually filed. Now, one for Fairweather Growers for just under 12 acres, one for Gilbert Farm, just about under 9.5 acres, and one for Hayes Farm for 11 acres, just over 11 acres. Excuse me for a second. We have an initial term and a full term. The initial term is proposed to run for 6 months from July 1 or July 15th to December 31st, 2020. That first 6 months, we're proposing to charge a rental fee of $1 total for each farmer. The rental fee is due to the cost that they will be incurring beyond what would normally or ordinarily be required to invest in their current agricultural operations during the initial period. There's a lot of work to do, basically. And they will be required to do a lot of work before they can get these fields back into production. The full term will run for 3 years from January 1, 2021 through December 31st, 2024 with a 3-year renewal option. And the per acre rental fee for the full term is proposed to be fixed at $50 per acre for all 3 leasees.
Per month.
Per month, per acre per month, yes. And in the next paragraph, I describe how we came about the $50 per acre fee. We have based it on the National Agricultural Statistics Service, or NASS, for per acre values for cropland in Connecticut, and also in consultation with the Farmland Bureau 490 study, as well as input from our friend Kip Kolsinskas. He's our consulting conservation scientist. Based on the 490 study, most of the Straska farm land is in tillable C and D categories, which will require some enhancement, and particularly for the Straska farm, the acreage is in need of some long-term improvements and some soil management, weed control, and possibly some infrastructure, such as irrigation and maybe some farm road improvements. Based on that, we decided to start at a below market rate rental fee for the first 3 years, get the farmers in, get the property up to production, and over the next few years, the property hopefully will be returned to more productive farmland, increasing yields and profits to the farmer. And by the time the renewal comes around, we could possibly bump it up to market rate, whatever it is at that time. The market rate value based on the NASS is $60 per acre for non-irrigated cropland in Connecticut. Continue, questions? All right, next paragraph addresses Section 8, permitted uses, land management practices. The lease is written in a permissive verse, similar to zoning regulations. Whatever is not listed as permitted is prohibited. This is pretty clear and easy to follow and understand. And also, Section 8 requires each leasee to submit to the town a listing of their anticipated crops to be planted for that season.
What section are you in now, John? Ray?
Now I'm going to Section 9. I just got out of Section 8.
Yep.
Okay, going on to Section 9, which addresses access. We looked at three reasonable points of access, one being Rose Road. Rose Road would be for that particular farm field that is just off of Rose Road at the end of the cul-de-sac. Probably Hayes Farm if this goes through. The other is from an existing curb cut on New Road. It's about halfway down our parcel A, the big parcel. There is a curb cut, but it ends at the apron. Beyond the apron, the paved apron, the property would have to be clear cut, stumped, and a road would have to be graded in. And the third option is using the existing driveway for the Straska farm. And we feel that if the farmers can utilize that driveway without interfering with Mr. Straska and without interfering the town's access to the property, we feel that would be a good possible access point for the three farmers also. Sections 10, 11, and 12 address improvements and repairs to the properties that will be, the areas that will be leased. Just aside from the standard allowances and permissions and requirements, we did feel after discussing with the three farmers our last meeting with the town manager that because of concerns that were expressed by the farmers for some existing debris that has been left in the field. I'm not talking about farm equipment. I'm talking about pieces of metal that you really couldn't see that were partially buried in the soil and now covered in some of the grasses. They will not go on that property and risk ruining or harming their farm equipment. So we looked at providing an amount of money, reimbursement up to $5,000 for each leasee for costs associated with the removal of that debris.
Yeah,
We
I just had a
thought that was
question.
a reasonable
Go ahead, Rick.
action to do. Again, because of the small pieces of the debris that that was left behind. There may be like a car axle or a portion of an axle or rims that are partially submerged in some of that property,
Yeah,
some of that
Ray,
soil.
it sounds like they know that some exist there. They're speaking
do.
from experience.
Yeah, they've
And-
been crisscrossing that property. They know that property very well now.
Yeah, and Counselor Christoph has a question or two to ask about this.
Yeah, so I don't know if this is actually more of a question for John in terms of the accounting of it, but doing some back of the envelope, if we look at next year and we look at the $50 per acre per month per lessee, are we accounting for that revenue? Is that just going to the general fund, or is the idea that we would put that into a fund that potentially we could use to draw out, reimbursement for these associated costs?
In the beginning, we would set this up as like a special revenue fund, and any revenues collected would be used to offset any costs associated with the property.
Thanks.
I have a question.
Counselor Malero?
Thank you. Again, I'm not sure if this is a question for Ray or yourself, John. But the 5,000, potential 5,000 per parcel, if that does come to fruition, will we be using the contingency fund that came from the purchase, the 500,000, or will it be coming from that special fund that you just indicated?
It would probably come from our bonding money. We had $200,000 for various costs associated with acquiring the property. So as long as we have money left in that, we'd probably use it from there in the beginning for those next 6 months.
Thanks, John.
John, could we have more clarification on that? Right, the bonding, we had the 200,000. What was set aside for the farmer that once he cleared, he could, what's being retained from the seller?
Well, this is money that we're using, the bonding money for this $5,000 reserve for each farmer as of right now. The 500,000 is still sort of in escrow until the town starts spending its money to clear up some of the equipment on the property. So at this point in time, the money in the bonding is available for the town use. Later on, if the town has to go in and start cleaning it up, then that Mr. Stratska should be doing at the current time, then that will become available for the town to use.
So what I'm hearing you say is that right now, the bond has been activated. We've drawn down on the bond. We have the money in the bank. And so we have money to use, $15,000 worth, 5 per farmer, if it gets used, and let's assume it gets used, 5,000 per farmer gets used. At some later date, we'll determine whether that 15,000 gets deducted from the retained amount that we haven't paid him.
Right, depending on how this ends up, yes.
But right now, it's not designated so.
Right, it's more that we doing this to encourage the farmers to take this lease and know that any really non-farming related clearing costs would be covered by the town. And that fund is available out of money still left from the issuance of bonds.
Anybody else like to ask questions before we go on?
I do have one more question, if that's okay on time. I think you mentioned this, John, earlier about the lease. Did you mention that it actually included the irrigation and electricity, utilities, things like that? Is that part of the lease, or is that a separate item in itself?
No, that's not including, there is no electricity or irrigation on parcel A. It's just, they're just leasing the field.
So that would be a separate cost on top of that?
Not for us.
Okay, I only asked because I may have missed it, but would that something be part of the contract or the itself, based on how utilities are taken care of?
I think it would be up to the farmer to install those utilities. They're not out there as of right now.
Okay.
And I think the irrigation wasn't even talked about in this, and that would be, I would assume, a different discussion.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Ray.
All right, sections 13 and 14 deal with inspections, environmental compliance purposes, agricultural management operations. Section 14C requires lessees to submit to the town a list of all fertilizers, chemicals, herbicides, you name it, all other chemicals that each lessee proposes to use and to apply to the land. And Section 13 also requires each lessee to implement recommendations of the Natural Resources Conservation Service. Which, by the way, they are currently working with each farmer now. on preparing them for conservation plans.
The NRCS is currently working with them now?
Yeah, Vivian Felton has been in contact with all three potential leasees. She'll be at the town council meeting anyway, to discuss their services tonight. Section 18 addresses assignment of the lease. Initially, we said no assignment. We met with the farmers and they said, well, you typically, when farmers are in similar areas, they lease to each other. So Section 18 allows the three farmers to lease among themselves without getting town approval. It makes a lot of sense. Any other proposal by anyone to sublease out to a different party would require written approval by the town council. Section 20 addresses termination of the lease. Particularly Section 20AII addresses termination by the town without cause. The farmers were concerned about that. So we added a sentence which requires the town to give notice at least a year before the effective date of the termination. That way they're fully able to harvest any crops that they may have put in the ground during the year. Otherwise, they plant, something happens, and they do not get the harvest, whatever they put, whatever they were investing into the crops. 21 through 25, standard conditions, disclosures, obligations, notices, document execution. And then my last paragraph, Vivian Felton from the Natural Resources Conservation Service, or NRCS. She walked the property. She was already familiar with the property due to Kip's report. NRCS will do a farmland and a woodlands conservation plan for the entire property. They will also work with each farmer on a conservation plan for each leased plot also. She will work with them for funding opportunities. She'll work with the town for funding opportunities. There are some funding opportunities that are only available to farmers and other opportunities available to the town. So we will be capitalizing on those opportunities when they become available.
Opening up to questions at this point, Ray? Additional questions?
I had a question.
Sure, Chris?
Yeah, Ray, going back to the question about funding, is there, one of the things that we've been talking about is the different grants that are available per partner or parcel, I guess, or per tract. Was the lease reviewed to make sure that the town, the holders of the lease had to be listed in a certain way to pursue those grants? For example, is someone who's leasing the land able to pursue a grant even though they don't own the property? Have we vetted to make sure that all that's going to work?
Yes.
Nicely?
Yes. Yeah, that's very doable. If you're a farmer and you're farming, it works whether you own the property or lease the property. Many of these funding sources are available to them.
Great, thanks.
Sandy, what do you think so far?
I think it's wonderful, and I want to thank John and Ray for moving this through in a really expeditious way and a way that's fair to the farmers. I mean, my opinion. I've been vocal on at least getting them in there this year and understanding the state of the land would change dramatically if they weren't allowed to get in there. And I understand John and Ray, or at least John, walked the land with the farmers and saw that, yeah, that was really, really an issue. So thank you to both of you for moving that along. And it's a very fair lease financially for the farmers. It's well within market price range for land, which I know you've talked with Kip, and Kip knows these things. So I'm really pleased that we're getting this done. We haven't solved all the issues of town space, which I assume is section B, but I think this is great. And I thank John and Ray for getting this done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brian, do you have any comments or questions or concerns?
No real concerns. I mean, I agree with Sandy. I think it's about time to get these farmers on there to get them working the land. So next year they can be planting some crops. I know Kip said in our last meeting there was a chance of some crops this year, but I mean, I saw the land too. I looked around there not too long ago, and definitely is a lot of work. I did have one question going back to the map on Exhibit C. Section 2, Track 2A. It looks like it goes into Parcel B. Is that what am I seeing that right? I mean, there's a hard red
Yeah,
line.
you broke up. Can you repeat that, Brian?
Sorry, Section 2, Track 2A. There's a
Yep.
hard red line up top, and then there's a red dotted line that goes into Parcel B. Is that going to be their land once Parcel B is available?
That could be a possibility. Originally, section 2 showed that little half circle.
Yep.
And we said, well, you know, you're in section section B, parcel B, so we have to pull that back a bit. But you know, in the future, that may be a possibility to expand the acreage for section 2, and that will be determined probably at the renewal time 3 years from now.
Okay.
Did I get that right, John?
Yep.
Okay.
That's all I had. Thank you.
John Malero, any other comments? You're muted, John.
My apologies. I have no comments. Thank you, Constable.
Sure. Well, I don't know about the rest of you, but I think, well, first of all, I'm happy to have all this material and take a vote tonight to send this packet to the town council. My only concern is it just doesn't feel like we're getting the cleanup of the site. It just keeps, you know what I mean? We have 15,000 built in there for the farmers are clearing it themselves when it was, you know, and I realize that we've got a problem seller, I guess. I don't want to say problem, but I just don't. Does anybody else feel that way too? I mean, we're trying to move this along and it's, you know, now we find out there's buried metal in the field. I mean, it just always seems to be one more thing. And the last parcel doesn't seem to be clearing out just yet. So I'm happy with the stuff we have here to recommend, but I'm not happy. I just don't understand what's going on with the clearing, you know? I don't know. Sandy, do you feel good about clearing?
You know, I think I understand, Ed. I think the problem here is this is so unique. I mean, we've never done this before. And to expect an old time farmer, and I'm not criticizing Tony, I'm saying this is a generation, farmers just have stuff. And I'm not surprised that there's semi-buried stuff and that there are going to be issues. It's not great. I'm not saying let's not fret over it, but I'm not surprised. And, you know, as I say, we haven't done this before. The farmers, fortunately, have been up there. They know what's there. They're willing to get in and take care of that. They're our allies in that. If they didn't want to do that, we'd really be stuck. So if they're cooperating and if we can reimburse them, I don't know that there's a better solution, despite our frustrations. You know, we can't, I see no reason to halt the progress and get this voted and get this to the council and get these people on the land. That's number one. And keep, you know, watching the cleanup and talking to them about what they're finding. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, but I think it's clear now that they wouldn't have started farming the land if we got them in last month. If they got to go dig metal out, there's no way crops would have been in last month.
Well, they'd have been a
I'm
month ahead.
surprised by this broken axle stuff.
They'd be a month ahead in clearing, you know,
Yeah.
it's all.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's going to take them this whole July to December to get it together. You know what I mean? I'm glad they have that time to get in and clear it more appropriately. Yet again, another level of clearing.
I don't know how great the debris is. I don't know. John, you walked with them. Did they think they could get it done and get in there? I don't have that piece of information.
I don't know the extent of it. I think they might have saw a couple places where there's some debris, metal debris that needed to be cleaned up. But then you also have to look at it. This is now town property. We sort of own it. We acquired it when we purchased the land and so on. So it would have to get cleaned up somehow, and we have the farmers in there willing to help out to do it. I just know that it was mentioned more in the fair weather acres section. He was noting a few places. I don't think the other two, Fran and Lisa, mentioned anything about seeing anything, but fair weather acres, Billy did mention it. So maybe it could be just in that section 1 area for now.
So this might just be cautionary budget in case we need it.
Yeah, it goes back to why we took out why it was a $7.2 million referendum, right? Because the extra 200 was for the closing costs and also some associated fees that are like cleanup fees on top of the 500 that we have in the holdback. So farmers have a lot of, it's been, a site's been farmed for, many years. I can't say, I mean, I'd be surprised if it was like a junkyard, but it doesn't necessarily sound like it's like that. Back in the old days, if you broke an axle in the field, you might have just left it there. Who knows? So I can't say I'm too surprised by it. That is why we took out the contingency in the referendum. I think that we just have to think about this is a multi-year process. And, we knew that the current occupant had a year to vacate. Hopefully that happens. There's still a lot of time left there, less than there was before, when it started. But, I think, Ray, you mentioned this is going to be something where we're going to do some upfront work and then reevaluate as we go. At some point, the soil will be remediated and improved, and maybe sites of it can be worked. There's the whole parcel A, which is going to be somehow managed. Parcel B will need to be rehabbed after the current occupant is off. So we're looking at a multiple year project. And I think that the sooner we can start the work, the closer it brings us to the end. So I'm a little bit more optimistic than we were, or than I was, last meeting.
Well, I think our eyes are a little wider open, Chris.
I mean, I was out there, so I guess it wasn't too.
I mean, I was out there, but my impression was that the cleanup was. Anyway, I don't want to beat a dead horse. I'm disappointed with the level of cleanup and more stuff that we keep to find. I hope it begins to be in the past. John, do we need to cover any other, or Ray, is there anything else we have to add in here? Or can we make a quick vote here to move this packet along to town council?
I think that's fine unless Ray has any other things he wants to talk about.
No, I think it's perfect the way it is, except for the couple of comments that we have to tighten up the language from Kerma, but those are just.
Those will be in the next packet, the Kerma amendment.
Yeah, they're very minor, very few.
And
so the motion would be to approve the language.
No, our vote would be to send this up to council.
Yeah, that's right.
For consideration.
Yeah.
But Ray, on the Kerma, there's still the town is still requiring the umbrella policy, right? The $1 million primary and the $1 million excess liability, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, they are still requiring the umbrella.
Yeah, and I think 2 million for general occurrences,
2 million aggregate,
aggregate. Yeah, general aggregate.
and to name the town as an additional insured.
Yes.
And is Kerma charging us anything for this exposure? Right now, probably no. It's newly acquired land. There's nothing. It's newly acquired vacant land, basically. But did it result in any insurance costs?
No, we made them aware of our, the town was planning to do. And they reviewed the lease. And we got, as Ray said, we got some recommendation, enhanced language to be put in, but we haven't heard anything from them about increasing the town's insurance premiums.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine that even if there was a charge for the extra liability because there was more square acreage in town, that it would be minimal, I would think. But any event, okay, nothing at this point.
And we haven't heard anything when we acquired the property a few months ago. And we haven't heard anything associated with these 3 farm leases.
So then, how do we, John, technically, how do I do this? Take a vote on whether or not we would like to pass this along to council.
Yeah, I think pretty much what you just said, land acquisition, open space land acquisition and Farmland Preservation Committee recommends forwarding the lease contracts for the 3 farmers to the town council for further review and recommend approval, recommended approval.
Do we,
All right, do
excuse
we
me,
need to restate that? Does somebody need to make that motion?
You just say whatever John just said.
Yeah. So moved. Yeah.
can I have a question?
Yes,
So part of that motion is that this commission is recommending approval. We're supporting it and the town council can rely on the expertise of this commission. If it recommends approval, then that's what's important. Am I correct?
I would only caution you there, Sandy. I believe council is looking for their opportunity to ask questions and
Okay, but
make
they need to
changes
know-
if they see opportunities. So, yeah, I'm okay with voting it and sending it up to council, but I think we owe the councilors the opportunity to see it first.
Sure, but they know that we approve it, that we've gone through the steps. That's
Yep.
what's important. Okay, thank you.
So what John said, we're taking a vote right now to, in the affirmative here, to recommend the packet to council with our approvals today for what we've seen.
Second.
I'll just, Sandy, your vote, yay?
Yes, yes.
Brian Clemens,
Yes. Yay.
Christoph,
Yay.
John Malero,
Yay.
Ed, yay. It passes. We're recommending the lease to town council. And do I have a motion for adjournment?
I'd like to make a motion for adjournment, please.
Second? Thank you.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
See you in
Bye.
a couple minutes.